As the year winds down and the world outside gets a little quieter, strange stories have a way of rising to the surface. Maybe it's the early sunsets, maybe it's the way the holidays make us look backward and forward at the same time. But this time of the year always seems to stir up the odd corners of history. Some of the strange but true stories on this episode touch the holiday season in unexpected ways. Others have nothing to do with it at all. They're just the kind of real, head-tilting stories that make you stop and think, how in the world did that actually happen? So settle in for mysterious objects, unsettling moments, and events that feel like fiction, but aren't. We're exploring a handful of strange but true stories that don't quite fit anywhere, except here, with us. Welcome back to Fireside Unsolved, episode 218, The Strangest but True Mysteries That Will Blow Your Mind, part 6. There's a strange figure who's become a kind of unwanted landmark in Swansea, in the UK. A man locals now call the Silent Man. For 7 years, he has stepped into traffic at the exact same spot and simply stood there. There's never any shouting, no signs protesting anything, no demands to move. Just absolute and seemingly impenetrable silence. Drivers slamming on their brakes, horns blaring for him to move, and traffic backing up for blocks became a normal occurrence. And when authorities discovered what the commotion was, they found him standing there, motionless in the middle of the road, always refusing to say a single word. What is known about the man is that his name is David Hampson. He's 51 years old. And despite nearly a decade of this ritual, no one has the faintest idea why he does it. Oddly, his constant silence isn't the result of any physical condition. Police confirmed long ago that he can speak. He just won't. Not to officers, not to the court, not even to defend himself when he's charged. In 2017, Hampson was given a 3-year sentence for the repeated public nuisance. And when he was released, he went straight back to the same spot and did it again, blocking traffic right outside Swansea Central Police Station in 2020, as if nothing had changed. As of 2021, there had been 9 arrests, 9 separate trips through the justice system, 9 chances to explain himself. And every single time, he stared straight ahead and refused to talk. Authorities describe him as uncooperative, not polite, not apologetic, just blank. Judges have made it clear they're not trying to punish him. They're trying to help him. But it's hard to help someone who won't give you a single word to work with. At this point, his future is uncertain. But unless something changes, he may very well spend the rest of his life in prison, or in a facility equipped to handle whatever causes this behavior. Maybe one day he'll finally speak. Or maybe he'll just stand there silent, leaving everyone else to guess what his story really is. If you've ever driven the long stretch of Interstate 17 between Phoenix and Flagstaff, you've probably seen plenty of rock, dust, and desert. But hidden in the wide median near milepost 254, there's one thing you don't expect. A fully decorated Christmas tree, standing alone in the middle of nowhere. For more than 30 years, this 20-foot juniper, basically a giant bush with big ambitions, has been hung with ornaments, garland, stuffed animals, ribbons, even a silver star on top. Every year, the decorations appear before Thanksgiving and disappear quietly after New Year's, without any clues left behind, and no thanks for the act requested. And for decades, nobody knew who was doing it. The Arizona Department of Transportation eventually stopped trying to solve the mystery. They'd drive past and see the tree dressed head to toe for the holidays, shrug and mark it down as one of those strange traditions that just happen. But the strangest part wasn't the decorating. It was the tree's survival. Arizona Department of Transportation noticed someone had installed water barrels and a makeshift irrigation system around it, a small, secret effort to keep the desert from killing the tree. That median sees brush fires constantly, sparked by engines, cigarettes thrown out car windows, or just the brutal Arizona heat. Flames have swept through again and again, leaving blackened soil and charred vegetation behind. In 2011, a fire burned so close it melted the irrigation tubing. But somehow, the tree lived. Arizona DOT employees started talking about it the way you talk about a cat with 9 lives. We've watched it survive over and over again. In 2019, firefighters saved it once more, but this time the damage left it too fragile to decorate. And then, the mystery finally cracked. In 2021, a woman from Phoenix named Nancy Loftus stepped forward. She said her family had been the ones decorating the tree for years. They'd never sought attention. They just liked the idea of giving travelers something unexpected and cheerful in the middle of a long, empty highway. After the 2019 fire, they knew the tree was too unstable to safely continue the tradition. So they stopped, quietly, in the same spirit they'd started. Nancy said they hoped to find a new tree someday, somewhere along I-17, to keep the tradition alive. But the original? That one stays where it is, scorched, stubborn, and still standing in the desert. A small juniper that kept its secret longer than anyone expected. Every so often, the internet coughs up a mystery that feels less like a rumor and more like a memory people aren't sure they actually had. Langville, Montana is one of those cases. A small rural town that supposedly vanished in the early 2000s, leaving behind almost nothing. No census records, no maps, no archived news. Just the faintest digital footprints and a lot of unanswered questions. But for a brief window of time, people began noticing something strange. Typing Langville, Montana into Google didn't bring up results. It brought up suggestions. Odd ones. Things like Langville, Montana incident, Langville, Montana disappeared, and the one that sparked the most paranoia, Langville, Montana turned inside out. But clicking those suggestions led nowhere. No articles, no cached pages, no forum posts, not a thing. That emptiness is what made people nervous. If the town never existed, why did Google recommend those searches? And if it did exist, who erased the evidence? The story simmered quietly online for years, picking up just enough attention to become an internet legend. Then it resurfaced in the most unexpected place. The 2016 Ghostbusters sequel dropped a reference to the disappearance of Langville. Most viewers assumed it was a fictional nod to urban legends, until people from Montana started chiming in. A handful of locals commented on reviews and discussion threads saying the name sounded familiar. Not in a clear, concrete way, more like a place they half remembered passing through on childhood road trips. A few swore the rumor of a vanished town had been circulating long before the movie ever mentioned it. Whether they were joking, misremembering, or recalling something real is impossible to pin down. The modern internet won't help you. Search today, and Langville barely registers. A handful of archived discussions referencing the phenomenon still exist, but nothing that answers the core question. Did Langville ever exist? Maybe it was part of a marketing campaign, a glitch in early search algorithms, an example of the Mandela effect, or a story that simply grew legs because there was nothing to contradict it. On the morning of June 29, 1967, just off the coast near Hallandale, Florida, Beach Patrol spotted something drifting in the waves, a small wooden crate, about 18 inches long. Nothing remarkable at first until they pulled it to shore. Stamped on the side in bold, unmistakable lettering were the words, "Property of USSR." Below that, an address, Institute of Mineral Resources, Havana, Cuba. In the middle of the Cold War, that alone was enough to put everyone on edge. Investigators noted the shipping information, supposedly sent from Leningrad and bound for Cuba, but no one could explain how it ended up bobbing in the Atlantic Ocean, hundreds of miles off course and completely unguarded. When the crate was opened, what was found inside only deepened the mystery. Inside were 7 yellow balloons, each fitted with a black rubber stopper, but nothing else. No documents, no instructions, no clues about their purpose. Just these strange, sealed balloons sitting neatly inside a Soviet-labeled box that never should have been anywhere near Florida's coastline in the first place. Officials couldn't determine what the balloons were for. Scientific equipment, weather devices, or something more experimental. Whatever purpose they served, it wasn't shared publicly. The case quietly faded from the news, leaving behind only the oddness of the discovery and the unsettling timing of it. A Soviet crate on an American beach in 1967, addressed to Cuba, carrying objects no one could explain, drifting in from nowhere. On April 18, 1961, at about 11 in the morning, a 68-year-old farmer named Joe Simonton walked out into his yard in Eagle River, Wisconsin, and saw something he couldn't and never was able to explain. Not to the police, not to the Air Force, and not even to himself. Hovering in the air was a silvery craft, shaped like nothing he'd seen before. And standing beside it was someone or something. A small figure, maybe 3 feet tall, human-shaped but not quite human. Several more stood inside the craft, watching. They didn't speak. They didn't seem able to. Every bit of communication came through gestures, simple motions of the hands. But Joe later said he felt something else too, like a quiet, wordless request forming in his mind. Bring us water. So he did. He filled a jug, walked back toward the strange craft, and handed it over. When he returned, he noticed something almost absurd taking place. The visitors were cooking. Right there inside the open hatch, they were standing over a small, flameless device, flipping what looked like pancakes. In exchange for the water, they handed Joe 4 of them. The whole encounter lasted only a few minutes. Then the figures filed back inside, the craft rose into the air, and it was gone. The pancakes were real. Small, round, about 3 inches across, dotted with tiny holes. Joe said they tasted like cardboard, but he kept one and turned it over to the authorities. The Air Force Technical Intelligence Center analyzed it and found nothing alien. Just ordinary ingredients: flour, sugar, and grease. A fragment of that pancake still sits on display at the U.S. Air Force Museum at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, a physical reminder of an encounter the government officially labeled unexplained. As for Joe Simonton, he never tried to embellish the story. He never changed the details. He said the visitors were polite, non-threatening, and strangely domestic. Not space invaders, just 3-foot-tall travelers making breakfast. And that's what makes the sighting so difficult to categorize. Most UFO stories end in fear, or lights, or missing time. This one ends with pancakes on a porch in rural Wisconsin, the kind of detail no one could make up and keep a straight face. But Joe swore it happened, and part of the evidence is still behind glass. On Christmas Eve, 1889, the Lerch family home in South Bend, Indiana, was warm, loud, and full of holiday company. Friends crowded the parlor singing carols. Dinner was finished. An 11-year-old Oliver, in some retellings of the story he was older, in others he even had a different name, was in the kitchen popping corn over the stove. Nothing about the evening hinted at anything unusual. A little before 11, Oliver's father noticed the house's water bucket was empty. It was a simple chore, one the boy had done countless times. He told Oliver to run outside and fetch fresh water from the well. Oliver slipped on his shoes, stepped out into a yard blanketed in fresh snow, and closed the door behind him. The night was pitch dark, the kind of darkness you only get in the countryside under a clouded winter sky. Seconds later, the house erupted in chaos. A sharp and panicked cry came from outside. "Help! Help!" The guests stopped singing. Chairs scraped the floor. Everyone rushed toward the door, expecting maybe a fall, maybe a frightened animal. But when they flung open the front door, the yard was empty. Oliver was nowhere in sight. His voice, though, it was still coming. Only it wasn't coming from ground level. It was drifting down from above. "Help! They got me! Help!" Mr. Lerch seized a lantern and bolted into the yard, shouting his son's name. The cries continued for a moment, growing fainter, as if rising higher into the night. Then, nothing. Just silence. A silence so complete it felt wrong. In the lantern light, the family saw Oliver's footprints in the fresh snow leading straight toward the well. And then they stopped, mid-yard. No signs of a struggle, no drag marks, no second set of footprints. Just a clean, abrupt ending, as if the boy had been lifted straight off the ground. Theories came quickly. Maybe a massive bird of prey. But what bird could carry a full-grown boy? Some suggested kidnappers in a balloon, but there were no tracks, no ropes, nothing overhead. Others turned to the stranger explanations: abduction, creatures, visitors from elsewhere, or a boy slipping through a space he was never meant to be near. But the deeper investigators dug, the stranger the story became, and not in the paranormal sense. There were no police reports preserved, supposedly lost in a South Bend fire. No newspaper records of the event. No entries in local archives. Even descendants of the Lerch family later said they'd never heard the story. And some researchers noticed something else. The story resembled a fictional tale published by writer Ambrose Bierce, titled Charles Ashmore's Trail, written years earlier. So the mystery took on a second layer. Was Oliver Lerch a real boy who disappeared into the winter sky? Or had a piece of fiction slipped into local folklore and over time become accepted as a case of genuine disappearance? With no evidence, no consensus, and no clear origin, the story sits in that uneasy space between legend and possibility. A tale told often enough that it feels real, but built on foundations too thin to confirm. All that remains is a chilling image, a boy stepping into the snow, a cry from above, and footprints that lead halfway across a yard and end abruptly, as if the earth simply let him go.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Fireside Unsolved. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to help the channel grow. Until next time, take it easy and be easy, you filthy bastards.